Ally Osborne, and we are here for a very special broadcast for Game On Sports. Now, this Saturday, the number 3 Oregon Ducks are taking on the number 7 Indiana Hoosiers, and I am very, very excited to have a special guest here with me to help break it all down. Please welcome in, he is a sports anchor and reporter for Fox 59, a sister station we have here with the Next Star family, Dave Griffiths. He has an extensive history covering teams in the Big Sky, the SEC, and now the Big Ten, and he joins me now. It's great to have you here.
Hey, good to be here.
It is great to have you. There is so much to break down for this contest. I mean, it is the 8th top 10 matchup to happen at Autzen Stadium. It is the 13th time College Game Day is visiting Eugene, Oregon. First off, I just want your take. How does this game look to you overall? What are your first thoughts off the bat?
Well, IU's going to certainly have to play a lot better than they did last time out on the road in Iowa. To be fair, Iowa's been a tough place for them to play for a long time. They haven't won there since 2007, so you can forgive them a little bit if you're a Hoosier fan for not playing that well last time, but they've had a week to sit on that and stew on it and hopefully get a little bit better. So from the Hoosiers' perspective, I can't say that they're playing their best coming into this game, but nevertheless, they're going to have to win games like these if they want to be taken seriously over these next years of in college football.
Absolutely. Both of these teams coming into this contest off a bye week. Oregon coming off their 30-24 win against Penn State on the road. Indiana coming off a 20-15 win against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about Indiana's recent prominence. Now, the Hoosiers have kind of gone off in the past 2 years, of course, making it to the college football playoffs the year previous, now having this 5-0 start to their season. Can you talk about kind of the relevance of Indiana football just in the past couple years?
In some ways, Indiana was for a long time just a sleeping giant ready to be woken up in college football. They have a massive alumni base across the country, a lot of people that do very well for themselves. They have good alumni donors, and for a long time, basketball has just taken prominence there. When Curt Cignetti arrived last year, he did so with the explicit instruction and, of course, desire to make this happen. And with all of his brash talk about I win, Google me, and all that came with it, it gave some people hope, but also some people pause, like, whoa, IU has never done anything like this before. And he's backed up virtually every word that he's said over the past year and a half, 2 years now. So it's been a complete 180 from expectations wise about what Hoosier fans want from this football team. So in the past, they would have been happy, thrilled with a bowl, like more than happy, thrilled with that. But now the expectations are quickly becoming to do damage in the Big Ten, be in contention for the league at the end of the year, and as the college football playoff expands, certainly be in that talk as well.
You know, Dave, you mentioned something that I want to get into, and that is Cignetti's fiery responses during media availabilities. Now, I watched his media availability this week, and it seemed like there wasn't that much fire. It seemed like Cignetti didn't want to give that much bulletin board material to the Oregon Ducks, and I think that might harken back to a previous game in the Ducks season where head coach for Oklahoma State, not anymore, Mike Gundy, had his quotes about Autzen Stadium, about the playing environment at Autzen Stadium, broadcast on the big screen before the game to Aurora boos in the crowd. Do you think that influenced how light the temperament was for Cignetti this week?
If anything, I might point to Curt Cignetti's own experience last year in the college football playoff when he came on College Game Day as they were about to take on Notre Dame and was perhaps a little bit more boisterous than he would have liked to have been looking back on it. So like I said, I think that has more to do with it himself. I don't think Curt Cignetti changed at all as a person or as a coach or just with his fire on the inside, but maybe a small lesson learned from last year when he just said one or two things that he probably wished he wouldn't, even though he still wants to light a fire under this team and under his fan base, which has been lacking, like I've said before, in recent years and even past years for Indiana football. So, like, you can understand a little bit that he's dialing it back now because the expectations are starting to catch up in Indiana. He doesn't need to be quite as boisterous. He doesn't need to be quite as brash because the fan base is starting to believe that this team belongs to be in discussions for the best team in the league, or deserves to be in games like this where it's a top 10 battle. ESPN College Game Day is there. So I would say it's a period of lessons learned, maybe more so from his own perspective than any other coach that has had bad experiences in the past.
And let's talk a little bit about College Game Day. Of course, College Game Day visited Indiana last year during the 2024 season. This is the 13th time being on Oregon's campus. I believe Oregon is 9-3 at home when Game Day covers the game. How are you feeling about this national attention coming to the Hoosiers?
Well, it's certainly exciting. They've been on College Game Day. This will be 4 times in the 2 years of Curt Cignetti, which again is, if you had told me this 4 years ago, covering Indiana football, I would have laughed in your face because this is not what Indiana football has been ever. And to have this much attention this quickly, it proves what you can do in today's era of college football with bringing in the right coach, with the right system, and the right guys from his system in the portal. Curt Cignetti brought in so many JMU transfers from his successful time with the Dukes, and of course, plenty of other guys as well. Like you look at last year's quarterback, Curtis Rourke, this year's quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, and then plenty of other guys as well who have had a significant impact on this Hoosier program, and plenty of other holdovers as well. It's not like the Hoosiers were completely devoid of talent. Guys like Omar Cooper Jr., who has 6 touchdowns, leads them in receiving, along with Elijah Surratt, who was one of the JMU transfers. So like there was talent here, but it wasn't being used properly. Cignetti came and coached the best out of them. He brought in his talent with him, and ESPN's College Game Day has responded. First, when they came onto campus last year, the win over Washington, and then the games at Ohio State and at Notre Dame, of course, didn't go their way. So they're going to try to do a little bit better for this one on the road.
Now, Dave, you walked right into some game talk. We should definitely talk some X's and O's here, specifically with the man himself, Fernando Mendoza. Now, against Iowa 2 weeks ago, he was 13 for 23 with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception, his first interception of the entire season. What did you see from him versus the Hawkeyes that could really come into play when it comes to against Oregon's defense?
The Hawkeyes knocked them off their usual in sync, in sequence offensive play. And that's what they had done so well leading up to that game this year. It's not like they're the most dynamic team in college football or that Fernando Mendoza is the most dynamic quarterback in college football. Far from it. But he finds completions, he keeps the offense moving, and he doesn't make mistakes. And I don't want to make it sound like he's just a total game manager guy. That would be underselling what he has done because they have been able to hit big plays when they need to. It's just that they don't need to because they keep moving the ball steadily down the field. And why risk the deep ball when you are moving it so efficiently and productively the way you are? And that's how Mendoza has gotten into the Heisman conversation because his numbers are so good, not because of these amazing Heisman-worthy plays that you see from him, but because he just hasn't been making mistakes. And the other week against Iowa, like I said, they just knocked them off their timing and their rhythm, so they weren't completely in sync with their offense. You mentioned the 1 interception that he's had, the only interception this year. IU as a team, the stats are ridiculous, that they have more than 1,300 passing yards, more than 1,300 rushing yards, and have committed only 2 turnovers on offense this year. You don't see that in college football. And for IU, Mendoza gets a lot of attention. Their running game has been so important to them, too, averaging more than 6 yards per carry. But Mendoza's certainly been the leader on offense of doing that. And even though he doesn't get a lot of deserving accolades, like I point to, there was a couple weeks ago in the win over Illinois where Pro Football Focus posted like the top 10 rated quarterbacks from that week. And Mendoza wasn't on the list. But his numbers from that week were absolutely ludicrous, and I can bring them up in front of me here right a second. He completed 21 to 23 of his passes, 267 yards for 5 touchdowns. Like, if that doesn't get you a top 10 rating in Pro Football Focus, I don't know what should. I mean, for crying out loud. But what they do is they just emphasize these big dynamic plays and long touchdowns so much that I think it's just skewed a little bit about where the rankings really are. Like, you would take Fernando Mendoza against some of those other quarterbacks from that week for sure, completing 21 of 23 passes. He just moved the ball down the field very easily, very efficiently. And like I said, that's what Iowa was able to disrupt a little bit. So if you can disrupt IU in terms of just their steady working down the field, eliminate the bigger plays on first down, get them out of sequence there, get into some more third and longs, then I think that is probably the key to slowing down what they've been able to do so far this year.
Well, Oregon and Indiana both having the highest scoring offense and scoring defense out of both NCAA teams across the nation. Wanted to ask more about Mendoza's legs, too. That guy, he has had touches for the ball, been able to scramble, a lot like Drew Aller, who Oregon faced when they went against Penn State in the whiteout. What do you have to say about the legs on Mendoza?
They're definitely there. I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson or anything like that from past years in college football, but I would certainly make him comparable to like someone else here who's in Indy is Daniel Jones playing for the Colts, obviously, but
Indiana Jones, baby.
He's not known for his legs, but he gets the job done when needed. And again, that goes back to what I was saying before about being able to gain yards steadily down the field, like gain a bit on first down, gain a bit on second. Then if you're in 3rd and 3 and then your pass isn't available, well, it's not that hard to scramble for a first down. So he makes these good plays with his legs that pop out as you're watching the tape because they are efficient plays. They keep moving the chains. You're like, oh, he's great with his legs. I wouldn't say he's great with his legs, but he's good enough to make the defense pay because they have to cover down the field for an offense that's steadily moving the ball through the air. So it's definitely something that Oregon and any team really for that matter has to watch out for when they're playing Indiana.
And Dave, let's talk a little bit more about the receiving offense for the Hoosiers. I mean, when it comes to targets for Mendoza, he tends to favor number 13 wide receiver Elijah Surratt and number 3 Omar Cooper. Surratt, I want to go into a little bit more. He has 31 receptions on the season for 412 yards and 6 touchdowns. He has a touchdown in 3 of 5 of the Hoosier games. Can you talk about kind of the dominance that Surratt and Omar Cooper, being kind of both on the rushing side and the receiving side, really bring to this Hoosiers offense?
Sure. Cooper's the one that IU fans are most familiar with because he's been here for several years beyond that. He played high school football right here in central Indiana. And his 6 touchdowns this year, he had 4 of them in one game. And that was against Illinois just a couple weeks ago. So he kind of had his breakout game there that he's been waiting to have for some time. And that really inflated his stats, especially his touchdowns a little bit. But he's been solid, don't get me wrong. But their go-to has certainly been Surratt ever since he got here at the start of last year as the JMU transfer, whether it was Curtis Rourke throwing him the ball this year or now it's Fernando Mendoza. He's a big wide receiver. He's a talented wide receiver. He's a physical wide receiver. He has a lot of tools, and that's what separates him from different players. Is like he's both big and fast. He's both strong and he's nimble. He's a prototypical NFL body for a receiver, so he's able to beat defensive backs in different ways. And he's not the type of guy you always see in college football who's either the smaller guy that can make players miss in space, or just the big guy who runs down the field and can out-jump the receiver, the defensive back down. He can do a little bit of everything. So his game is well-suited to this Curt Cignetti offense where a lot is asked of their receivers. So Surratt is the one that certainly should get the most attention from Oregon or from anybody else. But yeah, Omar Cooper Jr. has proved very well, like we saw a couple weeks ago over another top 10 team in Illinois at the time, that if you just put too much attention on one receiver, well, they have a couple other guys that can do damage as well.
And let's talk a little bit about Oregon's defensive front seven against this offensive line for the Hoosiers. Now, the front seven for Oregon struggled a little bit against Northwestern, led by Amari Washington and Bear Alexander. They cleaned up their act when it came to the Penn State game, really being able to hold that Penn State offense, keeping the Nittany Lions at 3 points going into the first half. How do you feel about this matchup in the trenches?
The IU offensive line is really good. And if Oregon struggles there, it could be a long day. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy IU win by any stretch. If like not even don't say that I said that, but I'm saying that unit is what enables this offense to click in the fashion that it does. Mm-hmm. They've opened up the holes for 270 yards on the ground per game from this IU rushing attack. And they're only allowing 5 sacks so far in the passing game in spite of throwing the ball quite a bit. So they get the job done on a regular basis. And I think they're probably one of the better 1 through 5 offensive line groups in the country if you just look at the stats alone. So if that is a weak spot for Oregon, it could be a long day. But nevertheless, I'm sure Oregon has a couple pretty talented guys in that front seven who are going to have a thing or two to say about that on Saturday afternoon.
Bear Alexander had a fumble recovery against the Nittany Lions. Amari Washington has consistently been a big body bully in that front seven, so 2 people to certainly look out for. Now let's move on to the defense for the Indiana Hoosiers. When I was looking up the stats against Iowa, the players that really stood out to me was linebacker Isaiah Jones with 8 total tackles, 4 solo, half of a sack, and tackle for loss, as well as Kellen Wyatt. He had 6 total tackles, 1 solo, half sack, and 1.5 tackles for loss. Aiden Fisher and Lewis Moore also stood out, both having 7 total tackles apiece. What are you seeing from the Hoosiers defense that's really going to challenge starting quarterback Dante Moore and the stacked amount of receivers and running backs kind of in the Oregon Duck offensive core?
Yeah, you mentioned Isaiah Moore. I think he has been a very big success story for IU this year. He's leading them in sacks. He has 3.5 on the year. They're also getting good pressure from the interior of the defensive line. Mario Landino also has 3 sacks on the season too, and a couple passes defended as well. So you're seeing pressure from the edges and in the middle. And any defensive coordinator will tell you that's ideal. Like, you want to keep a quarterback, especially one that's a mobile quarterback, in the pocket, and don't let him escape. And if Indiana can do that, that would certainly go a long way toward their success this weekend out there in Oregon. But IU, what stands out to me about IU's defense are their defensive backs. Amari Farrell has had a really good year. He has 3 interceptions in just 5 games, which is great. I think their best defensive back is D'Angelo Ponce, and he did not play the other week against Iowa. He was injured, so he's had an extra week to come back. IU expects him to play this weekend. He's great on special teams as well. He can return kicks and punts. He can block kicks and punts. So those defensive backs are really good. So if you get a little bit of pressure with the front seven, the back end for IU, I think, is the strength of that unit, and they're the ones that can make big plays, get that dynamic offense back on the field, and that's why they've been able to put up so many points this year.
And Indiana's rushing defense is one of the best in the nation, given that Oregon has so much talent and depth in the running back. For Northwestern, Lanning traveled with 7 running backs to face the Wildcats, which is pretty out of the ordinary. How do you think Indiana's going to hold up against that depth of talent with the Ducks?
I think that's a fair question, and it's probably one of the most important questions that has to be answered in this game, honestly, because in spite of IU, you mentioned the numbers being good against the rush, they also haven't been tested very much against the rush this year. They've scored a lot of points. Other teams have been trying to catch up. That means you throw the ball more. That means you don't run the ball as much. It's as simple as that. And Iowa the other week, the game that has been close this year, they're not the most dynamic rushing team themselves, so it didn't exactly give Indiana the biggest test in that area. Oregon is by far going to be the biggest test they have faced in the running game. And if you can send running back after running back after running back against them, wear down the defensive front, that really puts the depth to test. And if there's one thing that I'm not sure of if Indiana has, like other long-standing college football programs, it is more depth in especially the defensive line and the offensive line. And that's hard to do, even if you're a team that's like Alabama, that has been in the top 10 for 2 decades, it seems. It's hard to have that second unit on the defensive line and the offensive line come in and be just as efficient or close to it as the first one. Indiana might have a really good starting 11 on defense and the starting front 4. But how good is that backup unit really when they are put to the test in the third quarter and the fourth quarter against a group of a bunch of running backs that keep running at them? Big question for them to answer. If they are able to match Oregon, that goes a long way toward winning. If they cannot keep up, then Oregon can try to salt this thing away in the second half.
And I wanted to ask you, because I've seen a lot of chatter about this online, moving away a little bit from the X's and O's, is just the hostility, the atmosphere at Autzen Stadium. I know that the Hoosiers played back in the early 2000s, I believe 2004, against the Ducks. That was their last appearance in Autzen.
Got the win. Mm-hmm.
They did. It's been a
By some miracle.
So tell me a little bit about, is that stadium atmosphere in Autzen, is that a worry for the Hoosiers?
They have not played as well on the road under Kurt Signetti, but they're also still working into being one of these best teams in college football. And to be fair, not a lot of teams play great at the Horseshoe last year at Ohio State. And they weren't terrible. They were close. They got closer at the end of that Notre Dame game last year in the college football playoff. Last week, like I mentioned 2 weeks ago, against Iowa, wasn't their best, but Indiana as just a team has not played as well at Iowa. That was their first win there since 2007. So I think it's a fair criticism to say just in general on the road, Indiana hasn't been the same team as they are at home. But that's something that's more so true throughout college football, I would say. So it's going to be a big test. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know if I would put it as like, oh, Indiana's just bad on the road as opposed to home. I don't think I would go quite that far. I would just say it's going to be a challenge for them like it would be any team. And for an offense that steadily moves the ball down the field, especially instead of one that is reliant, can get a couple big plays, they're going to have to time and time again wear down the Oregon crowd and deal with the noise and stay efficient on offense and communicate well so everyone's on the same page. And the more times you do that, just the more times it gives the crowd the opportunity to disrupt that communication and just cause one or two guys to not exactly know what's going on. And that gives the Oregon defense, if they're on the same page, a chance to make a big play and turn things the other way. So just the more opportunities for Oregon's defense to do something in those situations, since they haven't been the biggest big play team this year, might give Oregon a slight advantage in that aspect, playing on their home field.
On3 Sports did rank Oregon in the top 10 for loudest stadiums by decibels, above Penn State and I believe also above Texas A&M as well. Now, I wanted to ask you another thing, and that's about mascots. Now, in 2025, the Hoosier Bison made his return after 60 years, almost 60 years of being kind of missing in action. So how has this new addition been for the Hoosier sidelines?
Fully embraced by the Hoosier faithful, that's for sure. They are very happy to see the Bison return. They've put them on T-shirts, they've put them on mugs, they put them on flags, and everyone's excited for it. And for myself, I mean, I went to Syracuse, so I'm a big mascot fan. Otto the Orange, still number one in my book. And I fully respect the Oregon Duck. As well. One of the top five, I would say. He's always fun if I run into him here and there. I think I have a couple times, like during March Madness or something, when Purdue or Indiana or Butler is at the same site as Oregon, and he's always a good time there. But yeah, it's something that's just building now. And anyone who's been at a place that has one of the more famous mascots, and they have all the traditions that goes with it, knows that it takes time to build those traditions. So right now it's just something that people are excited about to get back to it. And the tradition, the continual fun aspect of having it will hopefully grow, because great mascots can really just bring a little bit of joy to the college football fan, wherever it may be.
And Dave, I wanted to give you the opportunity. Do you have any questions about the Ducks as somebody that covers Indiana? Is there any aspect of the team that you'd like to know more about?
How dangerous are they at taking the ball away? Because I think that really, like I've said, if you disrupt IU's offense, that could be something that would really get them to struggle. Like I said, they haven't really done it this year. So if they face a team that in particular is just a strong either ball hawking secondary or a defensive front that really gets after the quarterback a lot, that would probably be the team that they would struggle with the most. I think just a steady defense could do just fine, but how dangerous are they in terms of takeaways on defense?
I would say takeaways on defense are essential for the Ducks. I mean, when it came to the double overtime win against Penn State, a interception against Drew Aller by Dylan Tiananmen, the Purdue transfer, was the thing that decided the game for Oregon and Penn State. I also think you need to look at Jerry Mixon, who is he's spent a couple of years with the Ducks. He has had 2 interceptions back to back, both against Oklahoma State and Northwestern as well. I think that there are some serious ball hawks out there. I think when it comes to the secondary, especially in the corners, there's some younger blood there. When I think of versus Penn State, especially on the right side of the field, that's where Drew Aller was targeting, that in the middle. It's because young freshmen Ife Obajewu and Kingston Lopa were covering that side of the field. There are some young blood, but the young blood is talented. I did notice that they were getting a little tired by the end of the Penn State game, and that's because they were constantly challenging Penn State throughout. But when it comes to interceptions, and getting the ball, I think that specifically looking for Jerry Mixon, looking for Dylan Tiananmen, and looking for those guys on the corners that are the young blood is certainly something to look for when it comes to Indiana's offensive attack.
Yeah, Dylan Tiananmen's a heck of a player. I remember watching him at Purdue, and even before that, I watched him in high school here because I went to get in Central Indiana. He went to Westfield High School, which is like 30 minutes away from our station right now. Covered him plenty of times. They're a team that's played in the state championship in Class 6A the past couple of years. He was a good high school player, then made the transition beautifully immediately at Purdue in college. So Oregon got themselves a good one in Dylan.
They certainly, from what I've seen when it comes to reports, they have certainly gotten their money's worth when it comes to Tiananmen for sure. What else did I want to ask you? You know, I'm going to ask you a silly one because I was looking into your bio.
Fantastic.
And I noticed back in 2013 and 2014, you covered the Florida State Seminoles with Jameis Winston at quarterback on their way to a natty. And I wanted to let you know something. In our Studio B, we actually have a Jameis Winston inspirational quote wall with all of my favorite quotes from the man himself. What is your favorite quote from your time covering the Seminoles and covering Winston?
If we're going to do it, we're going to do it big.
Yep.
That was one that they rode all the way to the national title there in the final year of the BCS in 2012. So that was a heck of a year. And what a fun time to be a Florida State fan and to be covering it. Went out to the Rose Bowl that year, watched them beat Auburn and Cam Newton for the national championship. Jameis was unreal that year, his redshirt freshman year. And it was one of the best quarterbacking performances, in my opinion, in college football history. He was so good. He was so efficient. He was so dynamic. There were a lot of good players around him for sure. But he always seemed to make the big play at the right time. And I'm surprised that he hasn't been as good in the NFL ranks. But you look back to what Jimbo Fisher did with quarterbacks for a stretch of years there. And he coached at LSU and then Florida State. Just this string of guys from Jamarcus Russell, who obviously did not pan out in the NFL, to guys like Christian Ponder, E.J. Manuel, and Jameis Winston. And there were several others at LSU as well that were all like high picks, if not first-round picks. For FSU, it was Ponder and Manuel and Jameis all back-to-back as first-round picks. So he was a heck of a quarterback coach. And then Jameis got to the NFL and was maybe a little bit more erratic. He might throw 2 interceptions for every touchdown he throws, but he was very interesting on the football field. I'll leave the off-field stuff off the field because I don't want to talk about that again. It was less than fun to cover and very frustrating at times. But on the field, it was nothing but a good time for Florida State fans, and that national championship was was very much deserved for that program.
I'm sure you can never look at crab legs the same ever again, Dave. And real quick, plug your stuff. Where can people find you? Where can people support you? What is the coverage going to be like for Fox 59 when it comes to this Saturday at 12:30 p.m. PT?
Yeah, plenty leading up to that game. And here in central Indiana, our company, Nexstar, also owns CBS4, and the game will be on here locally. And we'll do plenty of stuff with IU over the next couple of days, because this is obviously one of the biggest games, not just in recent memory, but in the history of the program. You keep winning like this, like you're Indiana, and you keep getting these games that are one of the biggest in the history of the program, just because the history hasn't been that great. Well, you're writing the best history your program has ever had right now. So we have to treat it that way, and we're looking forward to the next couple of days, and we'll see if they can go in, and it would certainly be a shock to the college football world, even though IU is a top 10 team. It would be a shock if they could go into Oregon and beat the Ducks on the road. And that would be just more of a coming out party for Curt Cignetti and for Fernando Mendoza and his Heisman hopeful season.
A lot of great stuff to get excited about for this matchup coming up this Saturday, October 11th, 12:30 p.m. at Autzen Stadium. College Game Day will be there as well. A lot to get excited about for number 3 versus number 7. Dave, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
It was great having you here. Thank you so much. And keep it locked on KOIN Plus, and KOIN will have all your updates on our Game On Sports broadcasts.